In this sequence, we will look at how we can get information in and out of an OCaml program. But let me just first remind you something. Up to now, we have all been using the OCaml top level extensively. It is very handy. It reads our program incrementally, phrase by phrase, and it prints the results of the execution of our programs. That is fantastic because up to now, we could really do all this work without discovering a single input-out operation. Everything was done by the top level for us. But in real programs, of course, you need to be able to read and write to a file, to a standard input, standard output. Well, OCaml offers a rich set of I/O primitives. Now we will look at some of them here, but first of all, we need to meet a strange type, which is called the unit type, which is very useful when you start doing operations that have side effects like input and output operations. So let's meet the unit type. Look at this strange expression, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, nothing else. If we hit return, the system tells us that we have defined some value, which is again open parenthesis, close parenthesis, of a type we didn't know, which is called unit. Well, this unit type is a typical type you find as input or as a result type of a function with side effects. It has only one value, which we also call unit, and which is just written open parenthesis, close parenthesis. And that's a special syntax for the only value of this unit type. And this may look like a strange syntax for a unique value of a type, but it has precise reasons to be there, and this will be clear just in a few slides. Okay, now that we have met this unit type, so this open and close parenthesis doesn't shock us too much anymore, let's look at the function for input and output. The first one we can use is for performing simple output, printing an integer. There is a function predefined for you which is called printInt. The type is actually int arrow unit. So what does it do? It takes an integer in input, prints the integer on the standard output, and returns the single value unit of the unit type. So, for example, let's print the integer 12,345. We hit return, and this is the result. I mean, to understand what is going on here in the standard output is important to understand that the first thing that has happened is that the printInt function has really printed on the standard output the number 12,345 and just stopped it there. Just after that, the top level starts printing its own message, which says basically that the evaluation has returned the value unit of the unit type, and there is no identifier bound to it, I mean the dash colon. We can also perform simple input operation. There is a predefined function which is called readLine for you. This is a type that says, takes a unit and gives you back a string. What actually really happens is that this function waits for an input value of type unit. There is just one, I mean this open closed parenthesis, and as soon as it gets this value, it reads a line of characters from the standard input as a string and returns it to us. So for example, let's try to read a line. Now you try to read a line, you need to give a parameter of a unit type. The only one we know is just open parenthesis, close parenthesis. When we hit return, the system waits for our input, so I write some text here, and as soon as I hit enter, the result which I get from the system is the string containing some text of type string. I mean, what happens really? So readLine receives the argument unit, starts reading from the standard input. After we type some text and hit return, the top level prints its message which says the evaluation returns a value, the string, of the string type, and there is no identifier bound to it. Well, very simple two situations, printing an integer or reading a line. Now I think we are ready to understand the particular choice of the syntax here. So it should be easy to see now why for the unique value of unit type it has been chosen to use the open parenthesis, close parenthesis. Because readline, for example, the example we have shown before, written this way really looks like a function with no arguments in other languages which you use for example, performing side effects. That's very familiar for outsiders. But for us, now that we are learning this OCaml programming language, we should remember that it really means the readline function applied to one argument, which happens to be of the unit type, so it happens to be written open parenthesis, close parenthesis. Well, of course, when we are starting to do input and output, there are many other base types that can be printed. So you have functions for printing characters, strings, floating points. You have function for printing a new line, flashing the standard output. And there is much, much more available. So you can manipulate standard input, standard output, standard error, create open, close files, read on channels, perform sophisticated operations like scanf, but this is beautiful in this language. Scanf, unlike what happens in C, is really well typed. And I do recommend that you look at the manual section on pervasive to get an idea of this kind of function. But a word of warning, some of these functions make no sense when you are running them inside the browser, like the exercise environment we are providing to you, and so they are not implemented in the top level running in your browser. You should just stick to printing and reading lines. To sum up, we have discovered a unit type, input and output function. So unit type, as soon as you see it, in general, you suspect there is some side effect going on. It is often used in function side effects. When you see something like readline, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, coming from another programming languages, you could think this is a function with 0 parameters. It is really a function with one parameter that happens to be of the unit type. And now we know how to perform basic input-output operations. But if you want to know more, do not hesitate in looking at the reference manual for more information.